Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we're going to check out another really cool Recur figure, and this is probably one of, if not my favorites, of this newest box of figures that I have received, but also might be one of my favorites of Recur all time. Like, it is a really cool looking, quite flashy looking Therizinosaurus, and honestly, it is so cool looking when you look at it from the overall appearance of the body, as well as just generally the really neat looking paint application that they've given it. Like, personally, I would have never expected such a cool coloration of blue to look so nice and at the same time kind of potentially natural on a Therizinosaurus, but Recur has pulled it off, and they've pulled it off quite nicely. And I think that, again, the overall flashiness as well as the really cool looking sculpt makes this figure a real head turner, definitely very pleasing to the eye, and quite possibly one of, if not my favorites from Recur of all time. It's just that cool looking. So let's go ahead, get a closer look at this really cool Therizinosaurus right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Therizinosaurus, you can see that the actual texturing to the face is really nice looking. As per usual, Recur usually does a very good job as far as the fine detailing aspect of their figures, and it looks really quite nice on this Therizinosaurus, really striking as far as that paint application goes. But you can also see the really nicely painted eye with a red and a black pupil, and that red eye stands out really well there when it comes to the lighter blue coloration of the face. You can also see a black beak is sculpted out and painted right there. You can also see that the detailing inside the mouth is pretty nice. It's not overly detailed, but it looks pretty good for the most part. You can also see the tongue inside the mouth there sticking up as our Therizinosaurus is letting out some sort of a vocalization. There are teeth actually on the inside of the mouth of the Therizinosaurus that you can see up there, but they aren't painted. But you can see that generally the inside of the mouth, it doesn't really have too much going on detail-wise, but it still looks pretty decent, and considering how small that mouth is, I feel like you don't really need too much going on in there. But you can see that the upper side of the head looks really nice, as we have that nice bluish coloration, but then you can also see like a yellow pickup right there in the center of the head and stripe back here into the back of the Therizinosaurus, and then you see some black picking up, and that black stripes down along the side of our dinosaur as well. You can also see a really nice area of feathers up here on the back of the neck, and the entire body for the most part seems to be feathered for the most part. There are some areas that obviously have a little bit of like more of a skin textured type look, but there is a majority of feathers on this Therizinosaurus. And you can see that the yellow areas have been really nicely dry brushed over with an orange coloration, so all of that feather detail pops quite beautifully throughout every area of that yellowish coloration. But you can also see that the black looks quite nice and very naturally applied as well. And then you can come down here into the side of the neck. You see lots of creasing in the neck of the Therizinosaurus, but if you look nice and closely, there is a very fine feathering to the figure as well, so the feathers do run down the course of the entire neck of our Therizinosaurus. You can see some hanging skin down here also. As we continue to run down the side of the body, you can see some black spots that pick up here and there. You can also see as we get down here that we have more of the feathers kind of like sticking up off of the back of the body, and you can see more of that nice dry brushing. And you can also see that there's like a black that runs down the very center of like the spinal column of the Therizinosaurus also, but they've really been nicely dry brushed to make each and every ounce of that feather detail pop really beautifully on the back, and it just looks insanely striking if you ask me. As we move down here into the arm, you can see like some seams and stuff throughout the figure, but that's very common when it comes to these kind of soft squishy feel figures. That's definitely something that you pretty much always see. I feel like that's inevitable, not anything you can escape from. But you can also see that the feather detail looks really quite nice there in like the shoulder area. As you move down into the arms, we have some more of that really nice fine feathering, and you can also see that the muscle definition is displayed in the sculpt. You have more feathers that kind of lead off of the elbow area of our Therizinosaurus, and then you come down into the hands, and of course we have more of like a skin textured type look on the hands of the Therizinosaurus. It looks really cool, and they've also dry brushed the skin texture over with a variation of like a brownish color, and it's almost like a reddish brown in certain areas, but it definitely makes the skin detail pop quite beautifully. And then you lead down into those trademark Therizinosaurus claws, and they are painted with a very nice glossy black, so they have a bit of a realistic shine to them. Leading back up here into the body of the Therizinosaurus, you can see some more really nice detailing, lots of creasing and everything going on here, showing off some of the movement to the Therizinosaurus, some of the skin stretching off of the leg right there. But you can also see that very fine feathering is present throughout the entire stomach region of the dinosaur. More of those spots do show up here on the side, and then you have again that black stripe, and then of course that yellow and orange mixture up here on the back. As we lead down into the thigh area of our Therizinosaurus, you see more really nice muscle tone displayed, as well as the calf muscles right there, and then some nice big feet with the same style of paintwork that we saw up there on the hands, with that kind of dry brushing of like a reddish brown type of a color, or maybe a mixture of both. And it looks really quite nice overall. I definitely enjoy the way that they painted the skin texture area of the figure, and you can also see the nails here of the feet are all quite nicely painted. You do have dew claws on your Therizinosaurus as well. And then we lead back up here into the tail, and again we lead out that length of the tail, very nice and short like we would expect it to be. You can see some more scale detail here on the underside of the tail, but also a nice mixture of feathers up here on the back, as well as kind of like some feathers sticking up off of the back of the tail right there. And then if we take a look at the opposing side, you're not going to see too much difference on this side compared to what we had just seen on the initial side, due to the fact that the Therizinosaurus is not in any type of a crazy dramatic position. But what that means, as usual, is that it looks quite nice over here as well. As we lead down the length of the neck, you can see again some really nice like movement to the skin here in the throat region. You can see like the skin scrunching up and stuff as the dinosaur is pulling its head forward. And of course you can't see me moving it. It's that soft squishy feel. You can bend the head and turn the head any way you would like, making sure that it's nice and safe for anybody to play with. And another really redeeming factor, as I always say, of the Recur figures is that the fact that they are soft squishy like this, it's so hard to damage them. Like, I have dropped so many figures as time has gone on, and every time I do, I chip paint or damage them and stuff like that, sometimes break them, and that's not something you ever have to worry about with the Recur figures, so that is always a gigantic plus for these figures. But you can again see as we move down that the arm is not in any type of a different position too far off compared to what we see on the other side. It's slightly different, but just a very, very slight amount of difference. But you can see even the undersides of the hands are really nicely sculpted as far as the skin texture goes, but you can also see from this angle the really nice detailing in the actual claws. You can see some nice cracks and crevices included in the claws right there, and you can see more of the feather detail here in the arm of the Therizinosaurus. You do see less of the stomach region over here because the arm is back closer to the thigh more so than on the other side, and the thigh is also pushed forward as it seems like it's maybe taken a step forward with its right leg. So you do see a lot less of the stomach region over here than what we had seen on the initial side, but you can see a little bit of it, and it does look quite nice over here, again showing off some of the movement of the Therizinosaurus as well. And then you have some more nice muscle definition over here as you run down the course of the leg. Again, that same style of paintwork to the foot like we've seen every other area that has had skin texture besides the underside of the dinosaur. You don't really see that. A little bit actually right here in this vicinity you do have a little bit of that paintwork, but the majority of the underside does not sport that style of coloration. It just stays that kind of bluish coloration, like a teal type color. But you can see again the detailing out here on the tail looks really nice, and of course we have that little fluffy area of feathers right there in the back, but the detailing here on the underside as far as the actual texturing to the skin looks really, really good. You can see some nice muscle definition in the chest region as well of the Therizinosaurus, but as per usual, it may not be your most accurate interpretation of a Therizinosaurus, but it is a really cool looking Therizinosaurus, and it's just so overly flashy, and I absolutely love this. Now, as far as a size goes on our figure, you're honestly not going to see much of a length or anything because it's standing up really quite tall. So we're going to try for like a length here, but you're not going to probably see a really good accurate length because of the upright positioning of the body. But from the tail to the snout there, about 11 inches or around 28 centimeters. And then if we go just from the ground to the top of the head, you are looking at just a little over 8.5 inches, or about the 21.5, closing in a 22 centimeter range. For a size comparison, here are our usual review comparison suspects with Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Golovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line, and you can see how insanely impressive the overall size of this Therizinosaurus is. Recur usually always creates really quite large figures. That's kind of like their thing. When you get a Recur figure, you know you are getting a decently sized figure and an impressively sized figure. And I really think that this image here, with just how much taller that Therizinosaurus is compared to the Paparex, shows off that exact fact that it is definitely a really sizable figure overall. So this Recur Therizinosaurus is a beautiful looking figure. Again, the sculpt is really appealing, with the Therizinosaurus almost looking like it's just alarmed, like maybe it had heard something, or potentially maybe had seen something coming its way, and it's sort of maybe letting out some sort of a vocalization to try to warn whatever is getting close to it that it will defend itself, or maybe it's just letting the other group of Therizinosaurs that are with it know that, something's coming. I'm not entirely sure, but it 100% has a kind of an alarmed look on its face, and I really quite like that aspect when companies can take a figure like this and kind of produce like a look of fear in the face, or a look of being alarmed. Like, that's really cool, and I feel like Recur has done that with this Therizinosaurus. It definitely looks concerned about something, and that really does create some pretty cool possibilities as far as display options for the Therizinosaurus. But I also think that they've done a good job on the overall sculpting and fine detailing of the figure. Again, it may not be the most scientifically accurate interpretation of a Therizinosaurus. Recur usually kind of creates their own style, kind of thinking outside the box, but honestly, I still think that this looks great as far as the Therizinosaurus goes, and honestly, it's probably one of the most appealing looking Therizinosaurus figures that I have in my collection. It is that nice looking here in hand, and the overall appearance to the figure is beautiful detailing wise and fine detailing wise. They really have done a fantastic job on like sculpting out very fine feathering to the figure, very nice skin texture in the hands and the feet and everything. It's just beautifully done. But the paint application might be one of my favorite parts of this figure, and the coloration that they've chosen for it is so insanely appealing to the eye, and again, may not be the most realistic interpretation of what a Therizinosaurus could look like, but now that I've seen it painted up this way, I really want it to look this way. If a Therizinosaurus ever walks down my street and doesn't have this really cool looking coloration to it, I'll be pretty bummed out about it. But it definitely looks awesome as far as the tones of color chosen, as well as the actual application of the paint. And of course, if you combine all of the really nice sculpt, paint, and everything with the fact that it's a very large figure and has a soft, squishy feel, you have a really cool figure overall that you don't really have to worry about getting damaged and will still look very impressive and overall quite striking in your collection. So if you are interested in picking this up, make sure you check the link in the description, as I will have a link to the Recur website where you can purchase this beautiful Therizinosaurus. And make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.